Hi, good morning, everybody. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Dawn Verbrigghe, and I'm the COO of Nutshell. If you're not familiar with Nutshell, it's a CRM for small business sales teams. We've been around for about 7 years. I'd like to start just by giving a huge round of applause to Sunir, if you could join me. If you've never planned a conference, which is a huge undertaking, or even in a large event like this at all, you have no idea the amount of work and the logistical details that go into this. But I'm confident that after tomorrow, Sunir will finally be able to discern how much of his sleepless nights are due to the third child and how much are due to the Small Business Web Conference. So thank you, Sunir, for that. So I talked to Sunir a few months ago about this particular topic. And we had we were sort of spitballing on the phone, and we had some ideas about, what we could talk about. And we kind of coalesced around two possible areas. And Sunir said, why don't you go back and write descriptions for those two things? And I said, that's great. So I wrote the descriptions. And for the first one, I said, this is something I could talk about for a few minutes in the context of a panel. And for the second one, I said, this is something I could give a solo talk on. And in typical style, for those of you who have ever had clients, you know that what he chose was number one, but solo. So I said, OK, great. So I'm going to take this 5-minute idea, and I need to make it really deep, right? And then a couple of weeks ago, I found out that I'm actually giving a keynote, so I'm not even tracked. So now I need to take this thing, make it 5 minutes, make it really deep, and also make it really broad so it can somehow appeal to all of you. Because I like challenges, I also decided to illustrate this entire talk with cats. And so this is really a tale of two companies. And instead of talking specifically about sort of when do you add another person to your marketing organization, I want to talk more about the role your marketing organization plays in your company overall. And I want to do it in the context of talking about two different companies. You can think of the first company as being kind of a minimal marketing company. This is before I became the COO of Nutshell. I was the head of marketing at Nutshell. It's my 4th straight head of marketing gig. So at 2 Series A companies, 1 Series B, and 1 Series C. So if you think that the minimal marketing company is just the thing that you guys are doing, you'd be surprised at how prevalent this is generally. But at the minimal marketing company, they're sometimes maybe very engineering-led, maybe very product-led, maybe even very sales-led, particularly if they're an enterprise company. But generally speaking, sort of basic traits would be speaking more about the product and about the features of the product as opposed to the benefits of the product. Not having a very big marketing organization, and certainly not having much of a marketing budget to put behind that group. Thinking very inside out when it comes to marketing. So as opposed to thinking about sort of the market in, really thinking about the product that you have and how that can be foisted upon, let's say, the market. These organizations fundamentally think about marketing as primarily a tactical group there to support sales or to support product. In particular, when you're talking about appealing to small businesses, these organizations often equate marketing directly with advertising. Marketing equals, especially in our industry, small business online advertising. It might also mean that marketing does some marketing communications, which is sort of making things prettier is the way it's perceived. I see some heads nodding, so I know that I'm not the only one who's experienced this. Marketing might also mean public relations, but oftentimes in the context of these companies, it means getting our product in TechCrunch, right? It means event management. Somebody's got to set up that trade show booth. And it means content. So here it's really about writing blog posts about your product so that you can make sure that everybody knows about that product, right? I would suggest that marketing could be a lot more than this. But at these companies, there's certainly somebody who can quote some variation of this This is Fred Wilson, who's a venture capitalist in New York. I think he's at Union Square Ventures. I don't want to throw him under the truck because actually I think he's amazing. But he said, I believe that marketing is what you do when your product or service sucks. And maybe if there's nobody at the company that can quote this directly, I'll bet they have mentioned Steve Jobs. And they have said that the reason why Apple is successful is not because of marketing, but it's because the product itself was so fantastic that everybody wanted it. And in particular, Steve Jobs didn't go out and ask the market what they wanted. He said that if you ask the market what they want, they'll tell you that they just want, for example, a faster horse. And here we are delivering them something that they never even knew that they desired. But I would say this. I would quote Steve Wozniak. Steve Wozniak said of Steve Jobs, he's the person who would see a technology and say, this is what it can give a real person in the world. I would say marketing was his greatest strength. So if we can say that there's maybe a larger role for marketing in the organization than this sort of more tactical approach, what could that be? And here we can think about sort of a more maximal marketing company or an organization that is thinking about marketing in a larger way, a less tactical way. Last night at the bar, as you do, I was having drinks with somebody who said, oh, this is the point in your talk when you could do this BuzzFeedy thing where you could say, now I'm going to give you 4 unbelievable ways that marketing can support your organization. And I said, well, just like BuzzFeed, then I will disappoint them when I actually show them the 4 ways because they will be far less surprising than expected. But I will talk about 4 different ways that marketing can contribute in your organization. And the reason why it's important that they do so is because marketing is such a huge contributor to failure in technology. These are the top 10 reasons why technology products fail. This is coming from CB Insights. I've highlighted here all the ones in green that represent some sort of function of marketing. Marketing has some responsibility for all of these. No market need, getting outperformed by your competition, the pricing being wrong, poor marketing, obviously directly, ignoring your customers, and having a mistimed product. Those are all things that marketing should be responsible for. So let's just take a few minutes to talk about 4 different ways that the marketing team could be contributing more generally to your organization. The first, which is obvious, is in strategy. So if I've described before that marketing often plays a more tactical role, it makes sense that marketing could play a more strategic role. And here I would posit 2 things. One is around positioning. So positioning being how, or the place in the mind that your customers have when they think about your business, how they think of your business relative to those of your competitors. Your marketing team should be working on that. It should be growing out of the analysis of your target market. It should be growing out of the analysis of your competitive environment. Marketing should also be focused on segmentation. I had the really good fortune of early in my career working at a company where we had a new VP of marketing join, and she came from Procter & Gamble. And to come from Procter & Gamble and to go into technology was a pretty big move. But the first thing that she did was she hired an outside agency to work on a segmentation project. And this was a multi-month project. And then she hired 2 people, or basically reassigned 2 people within the organization to also focus 100% on segmentation. She said the most important thing is that we understand everything we possibly can about our market, about our current customers and about our potential customers, so that we can understand how we can better serve them, how we can tailor our products to them, how we can price for them, and then also how we can go to market with them. And so we actually dedicated multiple months just to a segmentation survey, which was a huge strategic undertaking and sort of, I think, a real bonus for the company. Everything we did after that was based on what we had learned during this initial segmentation. The second area is in recruiting. Do you guys have a really easy time finding finding great talent for your company, especially engineering talent? The idea that there's a war in tech for talent is no surprise to anybody. We've heard it for years now. This is an area where marketing can absolutely be contributing to your organizations. When you think about it, the stuff that marketing already does applies very, very directly to recruiting, and your people team needs help. So, for example, your people team is constantly going to events. Marketing is great at negotiating contracts for events and making sure that you have the best representation possible. Let marketing do that. Your people team needs to write job descriptions that are compelling. Your marketing team is really great at writing compelling copy that drives people in. Your marketing team should be contributing with those job descriptions. Indeed, your marketing team should be working strategically with your people team to come up with an employer brand, which is the way that you're going to represent yourself to candidates generally. Third is technology. And this is an interesting place because this is sort of less marketing going out, and I'm actually proposing somebody come into marketing. Specifically, how many of you have marketing teams who have to compete with your engineering or product teams in order to get things developed? It's pretty common. Marketing will never, ever, ever win when going up against product for engineering resources in order to get something developed. It won't happen. I propose that you actually hire somebody within marketing who's specifically focused on marketing technology. And this has two benefits. One is that it means that the marketing team is able to set up those minimum viable products so they can test things more quickly. It means that they don't get assigned the most junior engineer from the engineering team to work on the project. It means that the person who's working with marketing is an expert in WordPress and an expert in HubSpot or whatever marketing automation software you're using, so that every single time marketing needs something done, whichever poor engineer has been assigned the project doesn't have to figure out how the marketing tech stack works. So that's the first thing, is that marketing can sort of go to market more quickly with the work that they need. The second thing is now marketing can actually do things that you might think of, if you've read the book Traction, as engineering as marketing, right? Which is where marketing is actually creating technology tools that help with lead generation. So there's a bunch of classic examples of this, for example, of hosting companies, website hosting companies that will allow you to put in your URL and test the speed of your site. And not only do they show you the speed of your site, but they also show you what the speed of your site would be if you had hosted with them. I think one of my all-time favorite examples comes from HubSpot. HubSpot had something called the website grader. Have you guys used this? Right? Pretty early on, where you put in your URL, and it gives you an idea of how your website ranks, primarily on SEO factors, such as do you have page titles everywhere? This kind of stuff. Kind of useful. And they've had it for a long time, but more recently, in the past year or so, I think they came out with something called the marketing salary grader, which is amazing. You say what your job title is within the marketing organization and what your salary is and where you live geographically, and you hit enter, and of course then your data goes into their database to improve their database, and you just become a lead for them. But you get in return to find out how you rank against all other marketers in your geography at your level. Extremely valuable to the person who's using it. That's entirely a technology tool used for lead generation, built out by engineers. It'd be really, really difficult to compete with your product team in order to get something like that built. But if you had an engineer working within the marketing organization, you could do that. The fourth way is support. So we know when working with small businesses that we have to do things in a very scalable way. And we know that with the customer support function in particular, we have to be able to scale the business more rapidly than we scale that organization. Well, as it happens, marketing is really good at understanding how to do things in volume. That's what they do with the sales team, right? The sales team does all sort of the one-on-one combat, whereas the marketing team provides sort of more generalized volume-based support. I posit that they could do the exact same thing with your customer support team. I can tell you that at Nutshell, one thing we're doing is we're having product marketing write our support knowledge base articles. And the reason why is because we found that when people were searching for specific terms, oftentimes it was that knowledge base article that was the first thing that appeared. And there were a couple of problems with that. The first thing was that the knowledge base article didn't actually sell the company at all, right? You sort of landed very, very deep into the website, and you had no idea where you were. But secondly, our customers who are actually searching for and finding those knowledge base articles, our customers, our users are sales reps. They're not necessarily the most technical people in the world, but the knowledge base articles tend to be written from a very technical perspective. And so we really needed a product marketer to go in and rethink how to write these knowledge base articles so they can be written to appeal more directly to our target audience. I have lots of time for questions, but I will leave you with this, as one should always leave, I think, any talk, a quote from Peter Drucker. There's only one valid definition of business purpose: to create a customer. Because its purpose is to create a customer, the business enterprise has two and only two basic functions: marketing and innovation. Thank you, and I have plenty of time for questions. Yeah.
I like the holistic approach to getting marketing involved. I like the holistic approach to getting marketing involved in all written communications, and especially when you get to the knowledge base, because you're right, that's an opportunity to upsell, but also a better opportunity to educate the customer.
Yep.
How do you disseminate that throughout the company? And do you have like a matrix set up where the marketing team is tasked to then different departments to help out with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So every company culture differs, right? My experience is that within a technology company, it's a little bit more of a difficult topic. And that's in particular why I think I like to leverage the product marketing organization a lot. I think because they have the word product in them, it's a little bit more palatable for a technology company. So we often use the product marketing organization to do a lot of these things, like writing the knowledge base articles.
Question.
Yeah.
Nice talk. Question for you on the recruiting piece. So you mentioned that marketing has a function in recruiting. Are there ways that you measure that, or KPIs that you're putting against the marketing team to help there, and how do you accomplish that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we take the KPIs of the people team organization, and we basically use those. I can give you a good example of this. So a couple of years ago, I was the head of marketing, and we worked with the people team on South by Southwest. So South by Southwest has sort of a job fair, which if you're not from the Austin area, I don't recommend exhibiting in. That was a lesson learned. But we did this booth where it was a Lego themed booth. And by the way, don't call it Lego themed because that's branded, we learned that. But it was a Lego themed booth. And what we did is we took those Lego base plates, you know, the kind that are green and are the floors. And what we did is we put them vertically on a giant wall. And then we had buckets and buckets of Legos, and so people could come up to it and take the Legos and put them on the board. And what it became was almost like a graffiti wall of Lego, right? This was really fantastic because engineers love playing with Legos, and this is the market we were trying to target. So we looked around, this is qualitative, right? But we could look around and we could see what percentage of the people on the trade show floor were coming to our booth versus the other booths. And I can tell you, when you have this sort of giant Lego display, it's a high percentage of the floor. So then we thought, okay, so we have a great portion of sort of the mind share at the event. How many resumes do you collect? How many of them become candidates and so forth? Yep. But I'll tell you, the people team would not have come up with that idea on their own. Yeah.
Back here. So
Hi.
thanks again for the presentation and getting back to that knowledge base conversation.
Yeah.
Like I'm exactly at that place where I'm thinking, hey, like from a marketing perspective, we could do a, let me call it a better job about
Yeah.
explaining how a product works. But I feel like there might be friction trying to convince an engineer that what they own and they think that they can explain better, that we may be able to do a better job. So I don't know if you could kind of tell a little bit more about how you did it. Like, how did you manage to say, okay, engineering team, just tell us what you did and we'll take the other side of it and just
Yeah.
project it. I don't know if it's how easy it is. I just want to think about the scenario.
Yeah, no, I know exactly that situation, and it plays out not only in knowledge-based articles, but also in-app communications when you launch a new feature, as well as in blog posts when you launch a new feature. The way we do it is that we have a very clear process for new feature launches, and we have owners assigned to each of those. Then we have contributors. So in the case of the in-app communications, the knowledge-based articles, the blog posts, the social media posts, and all of this, it's always marketing that actually owns the distribution of it, and it's the others who are contributors to it. So it's always very collaborative, but ultimately marketing is the final editor. They have the final say. One way that you can make that transition a little bit easier is to talk about the role of marketing as an editing function. Because oftentimes people will want to be contributors, but they're not very confident in sort of having sort of the final output be their exact words. So oftentimes we'll say, look, marketing will help you edit it, marketing will help you polish it, marketing will make sure it's written in the brand voice, right? And then people tend to be pretty open to that. Also, marketing will project manage it. So they'll remind you when it needs to be done. Yes?
So how have you built and structured the marketing team?
So it depends on the organization. So I joined Nutshell actually only in July, and then I became the COO in January. So only sort of about 6 months at Nutshell in particular. But I was the first marketing hire after some time there. So I built the team. The first hire I made was a content marketer. I thought that this was really important. The content marketer is also responsible for all of our writing. So he's been serving sort of both functions, a little bit of product marketing as well as content marketing, but now we're bringing a product marketer on board to support that. The second hire was a graphic designer. Obviously, you can't have somebody doing writing if you don't also have somebody doing design, so they work together very closely. The next hire was a marketing director, and he really owns the lead pipeline. And this is somebody with a very, very strong data mining background. So his job is to really understand all of the different ways that people could become a customer of Nutshell and map those out as different personas. And if you can think of each persona as an endpoint, we should have a different way to communicate with each of those personas. And so that's what he's mapping out right now. Yeah.
I'm curious about the marketing technologist person that
Yeah.
you were referring to. The last company I was at, we had someone like that, the WordPress expert, who was able to very quickly onboard landing pages and the like, and he was considered one of the most important people in the company. But I know that he joined before I started there, but I know it was very hard to find him.
Yeah.
Namely because there were very few people, presumably in the marketplace, that didn't want to work on the really hard engineering problems and
Yes.
wanted to work on marketing technology. So I'm curious how you've gone about finding those folks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great point. We actually had somebody, and now it's an open rec, so I'm open, by the way, for that. So one challenge, I think you spoke to it within engineering, is oftentimes they don't even want to work on these marketing challenges. Like, these are really boring. Plus, the engineering team really does not want to touch WordPress. Like, they really, really do not want to touch WordPress. So it's a question of how you find these people. We find that there are people who are more self-trained, so maybe they didn't go through the CS organization, or they don't have an engineering degree, but they're really interested in software. Those are great people for us to do that, because ultimately, if it's anything that touches our app anyway, we need to have an engineer do that integration. But this is really the person who manages the MarTech stack and helps us set up some minimal viable products for the purposes of campaigns so that we can test things and see if they're worth actually investing in. And then we will have to bring one of our own engineers in ultimately to make the final integration. But yeah, I would look for people who don't have sort of that EECS degree. I don't know. We're based in Ann Arbor, so I don't know. Maybe the University of Michigan is different, but we call it EECS degrees. We look for people who sort of are maybe more self-taught or have worked at other organizations, but don't technically have that degree.
I think that we'll have to wrap that up on
Great.
that question. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.